get started. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon for a workshop on OKRs, driving focus, alignment, and engagement in your business. My name is Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at Sacramento State, joined by two of my team members here. We have Arlene Miranda, who leads our marketing and operations. She's got the virtual wave there. And then we also have Brian Gladden, who's one of our entrepreneurs in residence and has been leading the charge on this summer startup series. So we're excited to have Ben Lamorte here to share a little bit more about OKRs. Brian will be sharing his bio, but before we get going, some of you that might not know that much about the Carlson Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable you as startup founders to launch and scale your businesses. And we're ultimately on this mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region, and really trying to build this region to be a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. We know some of you are joining us outside of the region. You're definitely part of our extended community, and hopefully you build that network around Sacramento and you start to see how we can add value to you, and maybe you can come to Sacktown with your entrepreneurial endeavor. But to kind of wrap up my portion before I send it over to Brian, this is one of our Discover programs, which is really providing you with some of the tools and frameworks to help you in your startup and business creation process. And so we're excited to bring this opportunity for you to learn a new framework around OKRs and how you can apply that to your business. And so without further ado, I'll send it over to Brian, who can take it from here. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Ben, for sharing your expertise here with us today. So
Cameron, you can just put your screen back up. It was perfect.
That was a perfect one. Very good. Perfect.
Yeah, so
I like that.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and for Ben for being here especially. So who's Ben, and what's he do, and why should you care? Ben Lamorte is what I think, and others on this call that know him, probably the leading expert in the world on OKRs and how you actually deploy and use them. He's the founder and president of OKRs.com, which I am a proud member of, and some other folks I'm working with as well on this call, and learning from Ben on how to actually use and deploy and be a coach, consultant, as well as use them internally. He's also author of 2 books, and most importantly, I think the author of the OKRs Field book, actually telling you how to do these things, and the original book, Objectives and Key Results, Driving Focus, Alignment, and Engagement with OKRs, with his co-author, Paul Niven. And Ben lives in the North Bay, so not too far from us, is a Davis and Stanford graduate, so keeping everything close to home. We love the thought leaders that are not too far away from us and can add to our region. So Ben has worked with hundreds of companies in OKRs, eBay, Adobe, Capital One, and he's going to share with us some of the basics about OKRs, how you can use them in your organization, or if you're going to be a coach or mentor as well. So without further ado, Ben, thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, awesome. Well, again, thanks for having me. This is an excellent group. I can see its quality already, just looking at some of the familiar faces and also the new faces. You know, for those of you with stills, you look like you have a lot of energy, you know, which is really good. I'm coming off of COVID, and so my energy is finally coming back. And so let me just jump right in and just say, look, I'm going to talk about OKRs. I basically will do a quick intro just to say everything you said was true. I would also add that I'm working with some big companies like Nike and Walmart right now, but also like UCSF, this medical center, also Stanford Medical Center. More and more, I'm going to be working with Kaiser. You know, you're seeing OKRs pretty much in any industry. It's sort of a joke because somebody said, well, aren't OKRs only in tech? And I said, well, isn't everything tech? I mean, we're working with a church that's basically a tech church now because of the pandemic. They're needing to do everything, you know, online. So even churches are becoming tech companies. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, OKR is really now all over the place. And yeah, like you said, I've written a couple of books. This OKRs Field book, I'll be trying to actually walk you through some of the content of that book today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a crash course preview of that. In fact, after thinking about how to lay this out for you, I wanted to actually walk you through the beginning of what I call the masterclass certification training, so that this can be a practical, you know, skill building kind of a session for you guys. We'll have a couple interactive exercises as well. And you will be invited to get a free €199 value pass to the OKR masterclass training. I can only give that to 3 people though. So like, just, we'll talk about that a little later. I don't have like unlimited free passes, but if you're interested in this, I don't want cost to be an issue. And so what I'm going to do is this is actually the curriculum that I have for my, 2-hour masterclass on how to be an OKRs coach. I'm going to walk you through these first 6 things. I think it's really important for you to see these 6 things in order to say, okay, I get it. I know enough about OKRs to be able to think about how I might use this in my work, or if you're an external coach. In fact, if you're an external coach, it'd be interesting to throw that into the chat just to get an idea of, is there anyone here that's actually looking to use OKRs as a coach with clients versus are you using OKRs inside your organization? So, you can chat that up a little bit and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, or I work at a company. So, or I'm more of an external coach looking for clients and all that. That'll help me learn a little bit about who's on the call. So I'll check the chat as we go. And actually, Cameron or Brian, you guys can maybe monitor that and just interrupt me at any point. So I'm not going to walk you through all this agenda here, but I'm going to just jump right in. So look, this is going to be an OKR. Somebody said, Ben, can you start with the cake in the oven and show me what the darn thing looks like? And then I'm going to break it down. So think of this as the mission. So this is a single marketing team. I chose a marketing team because I think we all kind of know about marketing teams. If not, we get spammed and we know that there's some marketing people out there somewhere. So marketing team has a mission. I'm going to pause here for a second. Notice that the team has a mission. So of course, a company, you'll often see that it has a mission. Here, what we're saying is, yeah, you guys have a mission as a marketing team, and it is something like this, right? To deliver tools to support the sales team and drive brand awareness and trust. Oracle had a marketing team that had a mission, and it was something like get butts in seats and deliver competitive analysis. That was it. So the mission should be plain English, kind of tells you, what do we do as a team? Why do we exist? This exercise alone is very useful, and it sets the context for the OKR. So an objective, which is a near-term goal, right? A qualitative statement, is something like increase the quality of leads cost effectively. Not that exciting, not that sexy. It's just, that's what we're focused on improving right now. Why are we doing that? So this idea of why now is something that I have now formally added to the OKRs model, and almost every OKRs coach has adopted this. We used to talk about an objective, and then we would say, here's the description of the objective. And we would just give some more context about the objective, free speech, write whatever we want. And sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't. What we found, basic motivation science, right, is we have to ask ourselves why. Why do we care? Why is this objective important right now? And so you give a little bit of an education, right, and a little bit of a motivation in the form of usually 2 to 4 bullet points that tell the story of why this objective is important right now. Typically, when you're presenting OKRs in your company, you start with the objective and why. Think of that as your first slide, and then you're going to reveal the key results on the second slide. And what we do is we discuss why the objective is important. We try to give it some passion, some motivation, okay, energy, if you will. Then we go into, here are the key results. The key results are those measurable statements. They look something like this, okay? I'm not going to read all of these, but the concept is, notice this one here, double the quality of leads. Double the quality of leads as measured by. You'll often hear the magic words of OKRs being as measured by. So again, make a mental note. OKRs coaches use these words as measured by. So what are we trying to do? Double the quality of leads. You can't just put a period there and say, that's my key result. Key results have to be measurable. So we put as measured by. What do we mean by double the quality of leads? An increase in leads that convert to opportunity within 6 weeks of creation from 20% in Q4 to 40% in Q1. The reason that this is so important is that you have to write key results when you write measurable key results in the form of X to Y, because you are proving that in fact, you know what you're talking about. At Twitter, when they first started with OKRs, a lot of times they would say, double the quality of leads or hit 40% conversion of leads. And then we would, at the end of the quarter, which is the typical OKR cycle, we'd say, how do we do? I don't know. We're not measuring it. Well, then how in the world did you get 40%? I don't know. It just seemed like that was a good number, and OKRs are supposed to be these stretch goals and things like that. So I'm just saying that another key takeaway for you is use the X to Y model for writing key results. So let me take a step back now and break this down. So an objective, I'm assuming you probably know that an objective is basically another word for a goal, right? So an objective, though, in the case of OKRs, is a qualitative statement. So it's a one-sentence thing that starts with a verb. It doesn't really have numbers in it, and it tells me why is it important. So going back to my example, notice this objective: increase the quality of leads cost effectively. Does not have numbers. That's the main point. Short, simple sentence that talks about where we're going to improve. Start with a verb. That's it. Key results are the how do we know we've achieved the objective. Now I'm pausing here just to vent a little bit. There's a book called Measure What Matters. It's like maybe the best-selling book. Well, no, it is the best-selling book on the topic of OKRs. I can't really recommend that book, but if you have it, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying maybe if you haven't listened to it and you want to get an audiobook version of it, Measure What Matters. The first 5 to 10 chapters are very worth listening to. But like many business books, after you finish the first 5 to 10 chapters, you're just sitting here going like, why am I reading this? It could have been probably shortened. One of the reasons why I'm picking on Measure What Matters, though, is in that book, which has like Bono and Bill Gates, right? It's like a bestseller, Al Gore. I couldn't get guys like that in my book. But anyway, here's the thing. He says the objective is what are we going to do? And the key results are how we're going to do it. And this is completely wrong. I want you to think of the objective is where are we going to focus to make progress in the near term? It's not what are we going to do. It's where are we going to focus to make progress in the near term? Because we're going to do a lot of stuff, okay? But where do we want to focus? The objective. Usually you don't have that many objectives, and you're telling the world or you're telling your company, this is where we're focused for improvement in the near term. And then the key results are, how will we know we've achieved that objective? This can't be subject to opinion. It's going to be the measurable statements that say, here's how we know we've achieved it. Did we achieve the objective? Yes or no? Or to what extent did we achieve the objective? And now we can align. This is really important because if you do hand-waving goal setting, you've probably worked at companies like that before. We're going to have a learning culture, and we're going to improve the customer experience, and we're going to be more innovative. Okay, great. But first of all, why are we going to do that? And second of all, how will we know that we're more innovative? How will we know that we're more of a learning culture? What are you really talking about? That's where the key results come into play. Here's an example of the mission exercise that I mentioned that you would do with teams. And this is in the field book. I throw this little bonus content just to point out that this exercise, some of my clients who do OKRs, they say this exercise is actually the gold, right? This is what we love. Because teams, let's say you're customer ops or customer success or customer excellence or customer support. There's all these, this is based on a true story. I worked at this company where we had like 6 departments that all started with the word customer. No one knew internally even what the difference was between these 6 departments. Something to do with the customer. That's all we knew. But by writing a mission and then broadcasting that to the organization, we know, customer excellence. We roll up the red carpet for our top 10 customers and make sure they get what they want. Oh, okay, I kind of know what customer excellence is about. Customer success. We ensure our middle market customers renew every year, and we support them in the renewal process. Oh, okay. So they're with renewals. I get it now. So, give me a sentence that tells me what you're all about. And the teams love to do it. Anyway, so this is a great exercise that you guys can try with teams and your company, okay? Once a year is what I recommend to do it at. So maybe this November, December, if you're looking for something to do with your teams, just jump on this mission exercise. Now, what are the key takeaways of my first little learning module here? Look, missions can be great context for OKRs. I really like to start there with a given team or a company before we jump into OKRs. Objectives, you get it. They're the area for focused improvement. They're qualitative. They have a why now, okay? This is how we educate and motivate the team. And also, this is how we check for resonance. Like, if you're not motivated by this objective, let me talk to you about that. What's going on? You're not that excited about increasing the leads quality? That's not important to you? Why? What's going on? In other words, motivation is a big deal right now. That's part of engagement, right? A lot of people are like, why am I even working? Good question. Let's talk about that. So OKRs is a framework for getting at that. And then key results, we already understand this. This is how we measure the achievement of an objective. Okay, let me define OKRs before I go too much further. I sort of gave you a high-level overview of what it is, but I really want you to think of OKRs as more of a verb. So it's something that you're doing. It's a critical thinking framework, which means it's a set of questions that you're asking. And it's an ongoing discipline, meaning we ask these questions all the time. So if you're doing OKRs, what it means to me is that you're agreeing to ask a certain set of questions regularly. And those questions try to get employees to work together. This is really important. Think about KPIs. If you've ever worked in an organization where you have KPIs, my guess is you've noticed how a lot of times people have metrics that just get them to work in silos. You know, the marketing team is thinking about, well, we got to get this many leads. That's all I care about. I got to get my number of leads. I don't care about the sales team. I mean, I hope they do great because I want to get paid, but whatever, that's their deal. I know my KPIs. I'm going to focus on that. Meanwhile, sales team focus on their KPIs. Customer success, you focus on your KPIs, right? You get the idea. Product team, you focus on your KPIs. OKRs are trying to get us to work together. What that means is they should be cross-functional from the start. There are major implications here. I'm going to just give you a quick example. When I was working with PayPal, we set OKRs up by product squads that had, you know, people from product, engineering, QA, marketing, all these people, even finance. They would come together to form a mini team that was cross-functional, and then they would write OKRs at that level. Did they also write OKRs for engineering, HR, finance, the functional teams? No, they did not. They only wrote OKRs at a cross-functional level, which was called a product squad. It worked. Had they also written OKRs for all the functional teams, it would have been a disaster. So anyway, in fact, they tried to do that, and it ended up, they realized that they didn't want to do that. So I share this idea of working together. It's very important right from the beginning to keep OKRs thinking about alignment. And then you're focusing effort to make measurable contributions. It's not that we're trying to capture all of our work in our OKRs. We're trying to say, what is the focus? And if we're going to be leaders in an organization and say, hey, we're focused on improving the customer experience, great. But how will we know we've made that progress? And what does measurable progress look like? And then did we really make measurable progress? And by the way, if you read the progress principle, which I don't recommend, I recommend the TED Talk instead of the book. I mean, you might want to put the book on your bookshelf. It looks cool. But actually, you should look at the TED Talk of the progress principle. It's maybe 30 minutes. And what they say, and this is a critical point, if you haven't heard it, write it down, and maybe you can get the exact quote. But it's something like, the most meaningful thing that you experience at work is making measurable progress on a meaningful goal. The most important thing you can do at work is to make measurable progress on a meaningful goal. This is based on like analyzing thousands of people's journals at work, and this is what they found. And you've probably experienced that before. Like if you have a really big goal at a company and you're working and you can feel like you're contributing to making measurable progress, it's kind of like you're building a house. I just read an article, construction workers are the most satisfied with their jobs. I'm not saying that we should all just quit our jobs and go into construction, but the thing is, they see the fruits of their labor. As knowledge workers, you know, we just do all the stuff. We fix the bugs, we try to release the product, we try to like deal with the legal agreement or whatever we're doing. And sometimes we have no idea what the impact of our work is. We're just too busy doing it. We're stuck as knowledge workers behind our desk. So agreeing on what measurable progress looks like, pointing to it and saying, aha, that's what we achieved. That's winning at work. It's a big deal. That's what engagement's all about. All right. So when I say OKRs is all about asking questions, I'm talking about basically 3 questions. So the first one is, where do we want to focus to improve and make measurable progress in the near term? Why and why now? That's the objective question. So you just ask that question and you meditate. You typically ask that question to the CEO, the leadership team, but then you ask that question at each level, whether that's a functional team, like a marketing team, or maybe a product squad, like I mentioned in eBay, but there's some kind of a team level at which you ask this question. At the end of the period, how will we know we've achieved the objective? It's a question. Fair question to ask. Now, the problem with this question, and it's not necessarily a problem, but this is human nature, right? What are we going to do when we ask this question? We're going to start making a to-do list. We got to update the blog. We got to update the website. We got to hire Martha. We got to post the job description, right? We have all these things we need to do in order to achieve our objective. And that's how our brains work, action-oriented. Nothing wrong with that, but those are not key results. Those are tasks. So we have to ask the question, what is the intended outcome of the task? This is the outcome mindset. I'm not saying that everything should be, all problems will be solved if we move to an outcome mindset. I'm not saying that. And in fact, sometimes an outcome mindset isn't very useful. Sometimes an output mindset of just getting stuff done makes a lot of sense. We're putting out fires. We need to get through this. We need to make sure the website doesn't crash. Do this. Oh my God, do that. Update the security software quick. I get it. But what I'm saying is we're missing, in a lot of cases, companies are missing this idea of what is the intended outcome of the task. Classic example. I mentioned it earlier. We got to post the blog. I actually had a conversation with a person in marketing. Gosh, this was like last week. And I said, really, we have to update the blog. Why? Why do we need to update the blog? Oh, well, we need to get more traffic to our site. It's just what we do in marketing. I'm like, okay, so why is it so important right now to update the blog? I mean, let's just put some pressure on that. Well, more blog posts means more. And I said, okay, but how do we know if you post the blog? Like, is it better to just post like 100 blogs, or is it better to put one really good blog that makes a big impact? And they're like, obviously, one blog that makes a really good impact. I'm sitting here going like, okay, I didn't know that. I thought maybe you just had to post a bunch of blogs, like some SEO thing or some compliance thing, but that's not the issue. The issue is you want to make an impact in your blog. What is the intended outcome of the blog? And they were like, oh, wow, that's a really good question. I never thought about that. This is a real world story, and it's happening with me and my clients all the time. In other words, people are doing stuff. They're going to tell me it's important for some reason that they kind of know, but they really have no idea how they will know if they did a good job. This is a problem. This is what I'm saying is the fundamental problem right now at work. People are doing stuff. They got lots of things they need to do. They know kind of why they're doing it, but they have no idea what the intended outcome is. So as an OKRs coach, we ask that question. Can you point to a blog that was a success? Oh yeah, there was that one. Well, what made it a success? Oh, well, it had a lot of people register for the demo. Oh, really? How many people did it have? Well, there was this one blog that had like 100 people register for the demo. Okay, and were all of those people that registered for the demo considered good? No. Only the ones that didn't put in Yahoo or Hotmail or Gmail email addresses, like the people that put in their work email. Ooh, what are those called? Oh, those are called leads, qualified leads. Okay, so what you're saying is increase the number of qualified leads from the blog from X, whatever it was, last quarter to Y this quarter. They're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So now it's not so much that we're writing a key result about posting the blog. We're writing a key result about what is the outcome we want? What is the bottom line impact that we want to make that says, aha, the blog was good. Once we know the outcome we want, guess what? Now that can inform how we write our blog strategy. The blog strategy better have a good call to action. The blog strategy, whatever it is. Okay, you get the idea. The idea is figure out what your destination is before you put your ladder up against the wall. For those of us that read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? You've got to make sure your ladder is leaning against the wall that you want it to go. You can't just start climbing ladders. And so OKRs is going to help you do that. And this question is critical. Now, I want you to think of OKRs as more of a verb than a noun. It's more of a mindset than an artifact. That came from one of my clients recently, and I really like this idea. OKRs are not, here are my OKRs, I wrote them down. Like I showed you that one, with a mission and the objective from sale for the marketing team. That's not really OKRs. That is an OKR technically. But if you're doing OKRs, you're asking those questions. All right, I'm going to pop over to the general benefits of OKRs. You'll hear people talking about OKRs. It's so great because, it has a shorter cadence. Instead of like annual goal planning or 5-year goal planning, which is cool. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. But the shorter cadence of OKRs seems to be a sweet spot. If you've heard of Agile and you've seen people doing that with like a 2-week sprint, that's pretty good. People are pretty good at doing like 1 week, 2 week, get the blog done or, hire this person or whatever it is. I got to get this done now. People have pretty good planning solutions in place for that part of their job. Also, most companies anyway, have a pretty good annual budget or a 5-year plan or some kind of a longer term thing. What they're missing is this middle ground, kind of how do we know we're on track by the end of the quarter, right? How do we avoid that hockey stick effect? What does it mean to be on track to achieve our customer goal for the end of the year by the end of this quarter? It might not even mean we have any new customers, but it might mean that we have 20 beta customers, or it might mean that we have 5 customer testimonials or whatever it is. But let's align on that using a shorter cadence of what does progress look like. Focus, I probably already talked about that. Transparency, one of the things about OKRs is it's made visible to everybody. And everybody cares about OKRs typically in an organization that uses OKRs. In fact, John Doerr, who is the guy that's the Silicon Valley legend who wrote Measure What Matters, his companies he invests in, they put OKRs above the urinals in the bathroom. So that's a little bit maybe taking transparency too far. But the idea is with OKRs, it's not a question of should we be transparent, it's a question of how transparent. Google, when they partner with other organizations, they write OKRs for what their partnership needs to achieve. So they align with their partner on what is the objective of our partnership. Here are the key results. Here's how we know we've achieved our goals. Let's align on that. And when they meet with them, they start by putting those OKRs up on the wall and saying, how are we doing? That is so much more effective of a way to start on the same page of knowing what the destination is with your partners that Google is now using OKRs, actually, I would argue more effectively with their partners now than they are even internally as an organization. Engagement, hopefully you're getting the idea, right? By writing down what the measurable progress looks like, by understanding why the objective is important, this can help with engagement. And then stretch thinking, this is a culture of OKRs, is to set key results that are very difficult to achieve. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Here are some benefits that I find with OKRs, which is just having a common language for talking about goals across an organization. This is a major win for OKRs. Now, some people use the V2 moms. Some people use the rocks or the big rocks or something. Honestly, you could probably say that you can get this benefit with any goal setting system. What's cool though is you're sort of putting in the EOS, the operating system of the goal model or whatever, by having a common language of goals. This is important. And then the other one is to balance inquiry with advocacy and build goal setting muscle. I'm not going to go on and on about this, but I'm going to tell you a little bit something about this. This is really important because when I was at Stanford, there were like 2 or 3 things that I learned. I was there for 3 years. 90% of what I learned is kind of in one ear and out the other. There were a couple things that were really important. And one of them was this idea of organizational learning. There's this guy, Chris Argyris, and he wrote a bunch of books on this. He's kind of an academic. And he talks about organizational learning. And one of the things that they noted in their research was that most organizations, even really successful CEOs, like at Apple Computer, for example, they would transcribe a full day worth of their conversation and they would score it. Is that statement advocacy or inquiry? In other words, am I giving you advice or am I asking a question? Like an authentic question, like I'm trying to clarify something. What they found was like something like 95% of the statements that could be classified were advocacy. So there's no inquiry. And the whole point is without inquiry, you don't get organizational learning. You just have a bunch of people talking past each other. OKRs brings more inquiry. You stop talking about you should do the blog, here's why, whatever. Why don't you get the blog done? Get it done by this date, why, whatever. It's what is the intended outcome of the blog? Pause. That's inquiry. When you have that inquiry, you create more organizational learning. Okay, so that's a big deal. Why do we do OKRs for a given organization? The worst answer I hear is Google does it. I don't hear that anymore, actually, but about 2 years ago, half the time people would approach me to do OKRs. I say, well, why do you want to do it? Well, Google does it. It's the best thing to do. No, that's not a good answer. The other bad answer is performance management. We're going to evaluate our employees using OKRs. No, not a good answer. That's not the point of OKRs. Good answers are things like focus, alignment, engagement, and accountability, things like that. Okay, hopefully that kind of makes sense. This is the idea of why we want to do OKRs. So do start with why OKRs. Anytime you're going to do OKRs, you have to ask yourself, why are we doing it? I mean, I'm not trying to tell you every organization should do OKRs. In fact, I was working with a winery in Napa Valley. A family friend had a winery. They're about a $5 million a year kind of a winery, small, but they don't want to grow. They just want to be a family thing. They want to keep it at 5 million. So really, there's no reason to do OKRs. Where do you want to focus to improve? We don't want to focus to improve. We want to keep things the way they are. Well, then OKRs really doesn't help you because OKRs is all about focusing to improve. Now, it's kind of unusual, right? Most companies do want to improve, but I'm just saying not everyone does need OKRs. Don't do it just because Google does it and don't evaluate it, right? Don't do it because an executive read Measure What Matters and said, oh my God, this book is so great, we should do OKRs. Well, why should we do OKRs? Okay, this is maybe obvious, but you really have to be careful that you're not doing OKRs just because it's like somebody got inspired because of a video or something. So now I want to talk about the nuts and bolts of the OKR cycle. So suppose an organization is doing OKRs. They're going to go through a 3-step cycle. They're going to define the OKRs, they're going to check in, and then they're going to reflect and reset. So let me break down each of these things. So the first thing that happens in step 1 when you're defining OKRs, often people define too many OKRs. They try to cram all their work into there. They write key results as a list of tasks. Like I mentioned, they say, update the blog, post this. They want to do all these things, but they're measuring output, not outcomes. This is a pitfall. And then they fail to define why the objective is important right now. They just write, here's the objective, here's the key results. They have no idea why it's important. So the idea here is get 1, at most 3 objectives per team. Think of it as a strategic area. And by the way, the trend is good. When I first started with this like 10 years ago, people were doing 5 objectives all the time. In fact, even 6 or 7 objectives could happen. Then I sort of saw 3 or 4. Now I'm really seeing 1 or 2. So people are getting this message of we really got to focus. And then you distinguish between key results, health metrics, and tasks, which is what I'm going to talk about on the next slide. OKRs are not everything. I've been saying this. I'm going to break that down for you. OKRs, we talked about this. You get it? Where are we going to focus to improve right now? A classic example of a key result is something like this. Increase weekly active users of this product from under 200. That's the kind of key result that we're looking at. Health metrics are the things that we're going to keep tracking, but we're not focused on improving right now. So for me, I go to the doctor, right? They check my cholesterol and they're kind of like, well, you might need to improve that a little bit. You don't need drugs yet, but yeah, you kind of need to work on that. So, I'm like, oh my God, I might want to do something to reduce my cholesterol levels. Okay. But then they check my blood pressure and they say, wow, great blood pressure, 120/80 or whatever they say. And I'm always like, well, thanks. And then I'm like, whatever. I still want them to check my blood pressure, but I'm not going to change my behavior. I'm not going to focus on improving my blood pressure. It doesn't really matter to me. That's a health metric that we're just tracking. Now, if it slips out of whack, I worry about it. So a classic example is your website uptime. I can't tell you how many times I see organizations that are like, we have our website uptime, we're tracking it. We want that to be a key result because we want to be a better culture or whatever. Well, if you're already at 99.99%, it's not really a key result because you're not trying to move the needle. Key results are where we're trying to improve. If you're just trying to maintain it, it's not a key result. So for some people, this is a breakthrough. They're like, oh my God. So in other words, just because you're measuring something, that does not make it a key result. And then just do it are the things that we sometimes just need to do. I've seen people tell me, update the software, complete the audit, as if those are key results. Those are just things we need to do. We don't need to write a key result called complete the audit. Or if we're going to interview people because we're a growing company, yeah, that's true. We're going to do that, but that's not a key result. That's just something we need to do. I've even seen key results that look like go to meetings. Going to a meeting is not a key result. It's just something we need to do. So we don't want to think of this type of our work kind of load here as part of OKRs. So the bottom line is do not map all work to OKRs. Just because you measure it does not make it a key result. So I've already said that. Do not map all work into OKRs. I keep on trying to say this because some people are tempted to do that. This is a very dangerous path because once you go down this path, there's always going to be somebody that raises their hand and says, well, what about this? The next thing you know, you're going to have this huge, imagine a Miro board that just goes off to infinity on both sides. And that's if those are your OKRs and you have to use that to focus, good luck, right? Okay, let's see if anybody was listening. First quiz. Okay, so you can put this in the chat, or if somebody wants to be bold, we have a small group, so somebody could absolutely chime in and answer this question. Create the job description for Chief Medical Officer position. Is that a key result, a health metric, or a just do it? What do you think? Oh yeah, you guys are good. Everybody's getting C. Of course, if you remember the SAT, when you didn't know, they always told you put C. That was my strategy anyway. But you got it right. And here's the deal. These 4 examples that I'm showing you, these are actual key results that people presented to me when I first started talking to them about OKR. So this is like, and these are smart people. So this is just like people aren't getting it, right? How about this? Increase time per unique visitor from 200 to 400 seconds. What do you think? Oh yeah. Everybody's getting straight A's. Yeah, you guys get the idea. This is a classic metric key result. We're trying to move the needle here. What about this one? Install new software by the end of the quarter. Yeah, Marie Pierre, first to win it. Got the winner there. Yep, you guys get it. It's a task. It's something we need to do. But yet people will sometimes put that as a key result. Doesn't need to be a key result. We just need to install the new software. It's just something we need to do. What about maintain average patient visit time at X? Of course, right? The one that hasn't been chosen yet. That leaves us with a health metric. But the key word there is maintain. Whenever you see something like maintain, it's probably a health metric. Boy, you guys are good. All right, so let's just pop over to this. In step 2, where you're checking in, remember, suppose you've written down your OKRs. Everybody's like, wow, we're totally aligned. I know why the objective is there. We have measurable key results. Ooh, I'm all excited to go to work. What most people do, set it and forget it. Kind of like New Year's resolutions, right? By February, you might not even know what your New Year's resolutions even were. You might have something about losing weight, maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's mine probably. But I'm like, all right, set it and forget it. This is not a viable way to go with OKRs. Even worse, though, and I've seen this happen, people start writing up all these meeting invites. Like, we got to set up all these recurring meetings to talk about OKRs. Boy, if you want to kill your OKRs program in a hurry, here's a great way to do it. Set up a bunch of recurring meetings. People are just going to be like, oh God, here comes another meeting. The other one is lack of clarity about who's accountable for updating key results. In other words, we write our OKRs down. This happened to me actually at eBay. We wrote our OKRs when I was there, and we wrote our OKRs down, and the key results had nobody's name next to them. And then the head of marketing was like, I don't know why this key result never gets done. I'm like, well, who is putting their name next to it? Nobody. Well, that's why. So you have to put names next to each key result. And then this one's brutal too. I've seen people do like OKRs for like 5 teams, and then they have a meeting, and then each team goes up and just like reads all their OKRs out loud to the team. I mean, you just want to leave the room by like the 3rd OKR. So we don't do that. What we do is we integrate OKRs into existing team meetings. So for example, if you do agile sprints, you pop that up on the board when you first start. Like I said, Google, when they meet with their partners, boom, they start the meeting. Here are the OKRs. Remember these? Okay, now let's talk. So the OKRs provides a context to kind of take a step back and say, wait a minute, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to focus on? Okay, now let's talk about our meeting. Updating confidence on each key result. Okay, this is really important. So what we do here is we talk about what is our predicted likelihood of achieving the key result. You know, we start out at 50% typically. And if it goes to 25%, we say, wait, why is our confidence dropping? Or if it goes to 80%, why is our confidence increasing? Key result champions update progress. So we have a name next to each key result. If I'm the CEO and I'm wondering how we're doing on a key result, I know who to call. If I just hired somebody from the competition and I see a key result that has to do about competition, I know who to call to set them up so they can have a lunch meeting, right? So there's this idea of key result champions being able to pick up the phone if you call them about their key result. Key result champions, we talked about limiting well, I didn't talk about this, but the idea here is with a multi-team check-in, don't read out all of your OKRs. When you bring multiple teams together, have them give you the 1 or 2 key results that they're going to highlight. Here's where we're winning. Here's where we're learning. And normalizing failure. So it's like, it's okay, this isn't happening, but this is what we're learning. You always have to say, this is what we're learning when you're failing. It doesn't matter what you're learning, but it matters that you're learning something. And as OKRs coaches, we hold you accountable for like learning something. You may not achieve all your key results. In fact, you won't achieve all your key results, but we need to document what you're learning. So this is a typical 4-box model for how you would update a key result. So you would start by saying, you know, how are we doing on the key result? What is the current value? How likely are we to achieve it, et cetera? What are the blockers? Is it driving the right behavior? And then what are the actions? Now, the reason why I like a visual is that when people are presenting a key result, often a leadership person will be listening and they don't care. You might be giving them a current status. They don't even care about that. They only care about box 2. Are we on track to hit this or not? Like, are we yellow, green, or red? What's going on? Like, if it's on track, I don't even want to talk about it. Or they might say, you might say it's on track, but it's not driving the right behavior. And you need to escalate that to leadership. So sometimes, yeah, we're making a lot of progress. We're getting a ton of mobile app downloads. You know, or we're achieving our key result to get like 10,000 mobile app downloads. Wow, that's great, right? Oh, but it's not driving the right behavior. Let me tell you something. You know, first of all, people are buying these mobile app downloads from these people in India, and they're crap mobile app downloads that are just total garbage that aren't going to lead to any new customers. So I think we're gaming the system. And now all of a sudden we're like, well, then this is BS. We got to stop doing this. So a lot of times the storyline of these 4 boxes becomes part of the culture of a company that's giving updates on the key result. And it's nice to force the key result champion, the person who's named next to the key result, to go through a process on a regular basis. Usually it's every 2 weeks, maybe it's once a month. So that's what the key result champion is. They're the 1 or 2 people who manage the key result progress and keep teams updated. I want to tell you a quick story about this. Sometimes you have 2 names next to a key result. And in fact, sometimes you require that you put 2 names next to a key result. Not long ago, I worked in a company where there were 2 floors. The business people were upstairs, the tech people were downstairs. There were only 3 or 4 people that could go up and down the stairs and talk to each other. So what ended up happening was the CEO was like, what the hell? You know, if I talk to the business people, they have no idea because they don't understand the tech. If I talk to the tech people, he's getting 2 completely different messages depending on who he's talking to in business or tech. So what they did was for every key result, they had to have a business key result champion and a tech key result champion. What that forced was a alignment of a discussion every 2 weeks between a business person and a tech person for every key result. And now, as silly as it sounds, people were talking to each other and they were forced to have the conversations about what does progress look like? What are the blockers? Are we confident? This created a dynamic that was a huge win for that particular organization. Now in Measure What Matters, it says you can only have 1 person's name next to each key result because we want accountability. So look, we can debate this all we want, but what I want you to think about as you're listening to me talk about this is you really need to be thinking, do we want 1 key result champion or do we want 2? Depends on the situation. So tune into your client, tune into your organization. You don't want 3. Okay, what we find is once you put 3 names next to it, you do have diffusion of responsibility, right? You have social loafing. Everybody's like, well, I don't know, that guy's doing it. You know, I don't even know why my name's on that. So 1 or 2 names next to a key result. All right, I'm going to just keep on popping through this. So What do? Do not set it and forget it, right? Don't create lots of meetings. Don't dwell on historical progress. When you're giving a key result update, nobody wants to hear you talk all about the excuses of why things didn't happen, or we did this, or what, we just want to know, how are we doing? Like, keep it short, and do not read out every OKR from every team. So you get the idea. Schedule a mid-cycle check-in. Use a standard template. Have a standard way of talking about key results, almost like you're in the military, because that's how you're going to be super efficient and make sure, especially leadership, when they get an update, if they all get an update in the same way, they can all talk to each other in a common framework. And it seems to work really well. All right, so the final step, we're almost done with this. I'm going really fast through my presentation, so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So most people skip this step entirely. At the end of the quarter or the end of the cycle, they just say, oh, well, or they look only back. They point fingers and they say, well, we didn't get that done because IT didn't do this. Well, we should have put people's names on the key results. The whole process is broken or whatever. And it just doesn't. Then they say, oh, by the way, don't forget, we got to get together next week to draft our OKRs for the next quarter. This is a bad setting. So what we do is we schedule a reflect and reset session with a clear agenda. And we ensure that learning informs next quarter's OKRs. Here's an example of a key result that we discussed. It's about 5 minutes per key result at the end of the quarter. And their key result was increase the partners from 100 to 500. We committed to 200. We said, we know we're going to get 200. If we don't get 200, we failed. 300 will be happy, but 500 will be amazing. That's what that means. Well, we got to 140. So the score is basically 0. Well, but what did we learn? This was an insurance company, and they were trying to get more partners. They assumed that partners would complete the sales because, hey, the partners had to pay $1,000 up front to become a partner. So everybody thought, well, they're paying $1,000. They have skin in the game. I'm sure they're going to sell the insurance premiums. Well, guess what? They didn't. So it turns out they realized these people need a lot more handholding. They pay $1,000, and now we got to do a bunch more work to get these partners ramped up. So the goal should not be to get more partners. The goal should be to get good partners. And everybody was like, wow, that's totally what we should do. But how do we know the partners are good? And so on the fly, we talked about we should increase high quality partners as measured by. Remember in the beginning of this whole thing, I said the magic words, as measured by. How do we know we have high quality partners? They've sold 3 certificates in the first month. Because what they found was the partners that sold 3 certificates in the first month, well, then they were off to the races. But if they didn't sell 3 certificates in the first month, if they sold 0, 1, or 2, those partners tended to not be able to become viable going forward. So then let's get those partners, let's handhold a smaller number of partners and make them successful. So look, I'm all about learning. This is a great key result learning experience. And in the next quarter, we're going to apply that learning and shift our focus. It's not a failure, guys. It's actually a success. It's actually better that we got a 0 here. If we had gotten 500 partners and they're all trash, that's actually not that good. So this is why with key results, we have a short cycle, which will go by very quickly. And we need to, whether we succeed or not, we need to think, what did we learn and how do we build our goal setting muscles to have better OKRs in the next cycle? This is what I mean by a learning organization. If you're doing OKRs right, you're literally on every key result, documenting the learning. You're sharing that learning and you're applying it into the next quarter. This creates a learning culture, a discipline of learning. So anyway, don't just look back. Don't blame other people. Don't just make a bunch of excuses for failing to make progress. Focus on these reflect and resets, learn, right, and apply learnings into the next cycle. That's the bottom line. I want to give you, though, 5 general practices with OKRs. Like with OKRs, less is more, right? The smaller set of OKRs, the better. So if you're first starting with OKRs, you're going to start with only 1 or 2 objectives at the highest level of your organization, and probably not even set team level OKRs unless you're a bigger company. But a small company of, let's say, under 100 employees, you only start with 1 or 2 OKRs. That's it. Nobody has ever come to me and said, Ben, I wish we had more OKRs. They have come to me almost every time and said, Ben, I wish we had less OKRs. So with that as wisdom, start with a small set of OKRs. Crawl, walk, run simply means so many of my clients are trying to like roll out OKRs. They get all excited, like, let's just deploy OKRs now, like everywhere. And the whole point is, this is a change management kind of a thing. Start small. Start with a company level or maybe a couple teams or a division, and then begin to evolve it, and then you expand. So scale it and then nail it. What I love is it's supposed to be nail it and then scale it. But I think I have a Freudian slip because that's what people do. They scale it and then they say, well, that's not working. We should, and then they try to iterate. Outcomes, not output. Again, we talked about this quite a bit. OKRs are not everything. Hopefully you get the point, right? We're not trying to cram everything in there. What is the most important area to focus now for measurable progress? And don't just put all of your tasks and your health metrics and things in there. Take that out. It's still important to monitor your health metrics. It's still important to do your tasks, but don't call those OKRs. Otherwise, you're going to waste your meeting time talking about OKRs that are just a bunch of health metrics, and your energy is going to go down. The only way to learn OKRs is to do OKRs. So if you were to do an OKRs training workshop with a company, or if I were to, that would be like, what I just showed you is pretty much all the theory I'd want to show you. Now I would say, let's jump right in and do it. And then as you're doing it, you're going to learn OKRs. So typically my clients, like in New York, will do like 20 to 30 minutes of training, and then we're going to jump right into OKRs and build them. Well, in Saudi Arabia, it might be day one is do the training, and day two is we're going to jump into OKRs, because in their culture, they really have to get to know you and trust you before they're going to start talking about their OKRs. So I want to be culturally sensitive, but most of the people in the United States are kind of more like those New York people. So you got to get through the theory quickly, and then you get into the actual workshopping. Now, of course, in our presentation today, don't know if we're going to develop OKRs, but we could. Depends on how much more time we have. I wanted to define OKRs coaching, though, my last thought for you. So OKRs coaching, like what I just showed you is OKRs, but OKRs coaching is when you partner with a client in a thought-provoking, creative, and structured process over 3 phases. The first thing you do is you align on the answers to the questions that will define their program. So things like, should the cycle really be a quarter, or should we make that 6 months, maybe 4 months? Wait, how many OKRs are we going to have? Just one, or are we going to allow multiple? Right? What level will we do OKRs? For teams or for just the company? Wait, what is a team? Is it a product squad or is it a functional team? So I have a whole bunch of these questions all in the field book about what that looks like. And we need to do that first. That's like forming the foundation of the program. Usually takes 2 or 3 phone calls over a half an hour to an hour, and it's not a lot of work. You can get this done quickly. Then you can do a training workshop to tell us, here's how OKRs works in our organization, right? Because now we've defined it. Every organization is just a little bit different. Then we do the cycle coaching. And this is what you saw with the 3 steps of the cycle, right? Align on where, and this basically is set your OKRs. Step 2, check in, and step 3, do the reflect and reset. And as a coach, you help your client get through all 3 of these phases. So anyway, why do we need OKRs coaching? I believe it's been proven to add value at Intel, Google, Oracle, all kinds of companies all over the place. It's still here. It's getting more popular. So it's not a new thing. It's getting a snowball effect, and it's starting to sort of take off. It's because it works. This book, Measure What Matters, created a huge demand for OKRs coaches. And really, that's probably why we're here. If it wasn't for this book, I don't even think we'd be here right now. But this became a big time bestseller. OKRs coaching, and this is an ethical thing for me. Like, I think, why do I want to get up? Why do I want to keep being an OKRs coach? Even though I'm in my 50s, I don't think I want to retire even when I'm in my 60s. I might do this when I'm in my 70s, if I can make it that long, right? 80s, I don't know, we'll see. But the whole idea is, if you can balance inquiry with advocacy, that's going to help the world. Like, you're actually going to make people have a better experience at work. You're going to keep them on track. This is a big deal to me. So I really want you to think about that. My advisor at Stanford, I was so nervous because I was going to go to a management consulting. At Stanford, it was either you go management consulting or investment banking. Like, I mean, I guess you could be a computer programmer, but I didn't have that opportunity. So I went with management consulting. I thought it was like the biggest decision in my life. I just finished graduate school. And then I said to my advisor, is it okay? Is it okay if I do management consulting? And he said, Ben, you'll be fine as long as you have time for critical reflection. What he meant by that was, it doesn't matter. You're going to change careers 7 times. You just need to be able to step back and keep yourself honest with, are you really doing the right thing? Do you know why you're doing it? Do you have a purpose? What I found was that critical reflection, ironically, now it's like 30 years later or something, I'm bringing that into my work. And I believe that people who are at work will be fine as long as they have time for critical reflection. And actually, OKRs is a way of doing critical reflection, or basically effectively making people fine. So anyway, to learn more, definitely send me a note at ben@okrs.com. I feel like I'd totally love to connect with any of you. Read the field book, the OKRs field book. In fact, I'm putting out an offer here. Like, if you send me your address, I'm going to send you a free copy, fine print, post a review on Amazon, because my publisher is like demanding that we get more reviews. The other one is join the network. You do have to pay for this, but it's not that expensive. This is if you're pretty serious about being an OKRs coach and you want to network with people like me and Brian and Andrew, and be part of the OKRs coach community. The other thing is, if you want, I kind of showed you a preview of what the OKR Mentors Masterclass looks like. There's a lot more exercises and it's more interactive in that. But I've got another offer, right? The first 3 that want to do it, send me a note. I'm going to send you the code, and you can get a free pass to the OKR Mentors training. Again, this is if you want to get a certification from an online training kind of a thing. It takes a couple hours. But it would be a great way to get introduced to OKRs. So those are my big things. And now I'm going to stop talking, even though you can see I get fired up when I talk about OKRs. I talk so fast and I get high energy. But I'll pause here and say, what do we want to do with the rest of our time?
Great stuff. Awesome. There was a question. I'll just throw that out there that Jill had asked. So Ben, to you.
Sure.
Says, is there ever a reasoning um, why should be included in OKR? So instead of just 500 partners, the reason we want 500 partners. So ensuring what makes a good partner as opposed to the focus on number.
It's a great point. Okay. It's such a great point. First of all, look, yes, the answer is yes, that you want to have as much why as possible. So now an objective wouldn't usually look like get 500 customers, but that would be more of a key result, right? Increase from X to Y, like some kind of a quantitative thing, typically. But sometimes I'll see, like, let me just answer this question this way. Sometimes I'll see an objective that says get to 100, be on track to get to $100 million by, 2025. Okay. So the objective sometimes is be on track to get to $100 million in revenue by 2025. Now that objective could be a very bad objective because it's just like a financial target, right? Is that really an objective? But if you tell me why, and you tell me, look, in order to get listed on Gartner and be recognized as a player in an industry, the magic number is 100 million, and we need to get to that by 2025 because if we don't, our investors are going to pull the plugs or whatever. If you can give me a good story as to why we've picked that random number of 100 million, and basically explain to me that it's not a random number, that 100 million has significance, and you can motivate and educate me, that itself could be an objective. So that's the first part of your answer to your question. The second part is, in other cases, let's go back to that example that I had up here. The key result that I took out of context was this one here, increase partners from 100 to 500 and all that. Well, absolutely, you can have, I would say it's optional. Usually this key result is part of defining what it means to, well, let me go to a better example. Let's go to this very first one that we did. Okay. So here it says, obtain ROI of marketing as measured by reporting revenue per cost for 5 conferences where we spent $50,000 or more. You might say, well, wait, why is it only $50,000 or more? Wait, why is it 5 conferences? Why is it obtain ROI of marketing? Like, what is going on? You told me why for the objective, but where's the why for the key result? So the first thing is, in some cases, people actually do have a why for every key result. They literally have, why is the objective important? Why is the key result important? That is probably optional for key results. Like sometimes, like in this case here, you might say, well, obviously we know why this is important. You just told me we're not measuring the ROI. We know we need to start measuring it. And so this is how we're going to know we're measuring it. Fine, I get it. But in other cases, you might be like, well, why do we need to reduce the overall cost lead from 105 to 75? What is the 75 based on? And here it's saying the cost per lead at 105 is not viable as we scale and is a key driver in the financial plan. Still, I might wonder, but 75 gets us to a 10% profit or whatever. So all of this analysis of why, the more of it, the better. And so OKRs kind of creates a playground for asking questions like that.
Good stuff. Anyone else have any questions? Go ahead, unmute and ask away.
Well, I see one question, which is, can we get a copy of the slide? I mean, absolutely, I can send the slides out to people. No problem at all. But I would highly recommend, okay, I'm doing the shameless plug, you get the OKRs field book. So if you really want to learn about OKRs, this is the book to get. It is also now on audio, but I mean, it's really sort of ironic because it's a field book. There's like lots of tables and graphics and, case studies and, like lists of things like good key results and bad key results. So I think the book, the hard copy of the book is probably the best way to have it as opposed to, the audio book. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you're interested in the Amazon book or whatever, send me an email, just directly to ben@okrs.com. I'll put it in here too in the chat, and then I'll reply to you, and we'll get a discussion going, and I can get you some stuff.
Looked like you had Mary say that she's definitely interested, Ben.
There we go.
In the master class and everything, so that's great.
Yep.
And Chris is doing some of them now internally, using them. So I'm going to chat with him, give him have a little chat and guidance. And
yeah, I would say if you're actually using OKRs, like really, I mean, again, I'm saying this is the book. I think this book will become invaluable to you because what it'll do is it'll help you to prevent, it'll prevent you from going down the path of making the classic mistakes that everybody makes. And if you are in this group and you're listening to this, I'm sure either Brian, Andrew, or I will absolutely give you a quote free hour coaching session, to sort of do a debrief. So think about if you want to work with Brian, me, or Andrew, and we'll absolutely follow up with you. I mean, fine print, as long as you've read part of the OKRs field book, so that you're starting to come to the table with some questions like, okay, I'm trying to do this. How do I create alignment? Like it says in page 74 of the field book, you're supposed to do this. I actually want to have a dialogue with you if you're in that situation, partially because in 2 years, I'm supposed to come up with another edition of the field book. This is version 1, right? But the field book should be organic, and I really want it to be based on real world experience. So I'm still growing some of my my thoughts, and I'm going to have more contributors as well. Right now, we only have 3 or 4 contributors other than me. The idea is to bring more voices into the book, so it's not just like, well, here's what Ben says. In order for it to be the definitive book on OKRs coaching, I need like 10 OKRs coaches from around the world to contribute to this OKRs field book. Even Sacramento, right? I don't have anybody from Sacramento yet.
Now you do. We got it.
All right, that's good. All right, well, thanks so much, everybody. I'll leave you with this last thought, which is over here on this last page of my thing, where I basically said, think about these as some possible next steps. Send me a note and just say, hey, I want to talk about OKRs, and or say, here's my address. Can you just send me the book? The other option being check out this www.okrscoach.network, and you can find out if you want to join that. I think it has a free trial, but you can kind of scope that out. And then the other one is, I really want to do the OKRs Mentors Masterclass. Fine print on this one. I really wouldn't recommend this until you have the field book, because the field book is kind of like the textbook that you use to kind of get through the course. So it's maybe start with the book, and then if you're really wanting to become like a guru, then you go to the masterclass, spend a couple hours on a video training, take some quizzes and stuff like that.
Awesome. Any last questions? Got the contact info for Ben there. We'll get the slides to you, the recording to you. Cameron will get all that. This is great stuff. You can contact myself to have a free mentor session and talk through any of these things. If you're using it or just have questions.
And then what I love to do too, Brian, just to interrupt you for a second, is just before we wrap this up, because I think we're going to wrap up now, is like, let's get 3 people to say, what is your key takeaway? I'm just kind of curious, what registered for you? Like, was there something different than you expected? Were you like, oh my God, it's different than, OKRs are this? Or if even your key takeaway is like, wow, I got to use this in my company, or, okay, we're doing OKRs, but like the one thing I learned was blah, just give me something. Let's get 3 people to just verbalize that.
I'll go first. This is Mary Flanagan in Austin, Texas. And I've done quite a bit of strategic planning for both tech companies and also most recently with nonprofits, focused mostly on using KPIs. And it really does lead to the silo effect that you discussed. So for me, a big takeaway is just that idea of looking at the objective in more of a context with a cross-functional context and coming up with an OKR versus a KPI. So that's a great takeaway for me.
Yep.
Thank you, by the way. It's interesting.
That's a great one, Mary. A lot of people are putting in good takeaways on the chat, not to OKR tasks, right? In other words, I think I get you, Amy. In other words, don't just make a list of tasks and call that OKRs, which is really what people do. And that's fine if people do that, but remember, right? Ask the question when you see a task. Like I used to make them wrong. Like this is a funny story, but in the beginning of my OKRs coaching career, I would say, no, that's not, you're doing it wrong. That's just a task. Well, that's a pretty dismissive way of treating somebody. So what I do now is I say, okay, that sounds like a really important task. What is the intended outcome of that? Like how we know that that task moves the needle. So as opposed to just dismissing them, build off of what they're saying.
Good comments. Let's see.
Can I use this in making a business canvas? A lot of people are using OKRs kind of thinking in a business canvas. And in fact, I don't know, gosh, who is it? Well, there's 3 or 4 people that are coming to mind actually who have done this, okay, where they've used OKRs. There's also something called a working canvas agreement, or working agreement canvas, I should say, where I can send you a copy of that if you send me an email, and we'll talk about that offline. But yeah, absolutely. A lot of this OKR stuff is being used in some kind of a canvas. And in fact, to be fair, let me show you a sample. Do I have one in here? Yeah, this is a sample handout that we use for drafting OKRs. And it looks a little bit like a canvas, right? It's like, hey, well, here's the mission. Here's kind of the alignment check. Where are the critical dependencies? What is the objective? Why is that important now? What do the key results look like? Oh, here's some scoring criteria. So this is getting a little bit like a canvas. But yeah, you can imagine that this can be incorporated.
I think, June, I've worked with you. I think you're kind of maybe referring to either the lean canvas or business model canvas, that you're starting a business, you wanted to create that. So I guess for you, one of your first objectives is to create your business model or lean canvas. And the reason why is because you need to put your business model on paper so you can actually create a pitch deck or get funding and know how to create value. So if that's what you're getting at, then, it's a personal, internal, definitely OKR for you, I guess.
Yeah. And I think business model generation, you've probably seen that book. I think it's called business plan generation.
Correct.
Or business model. That's a classic that can also be used for getting ideas about the canvases. Let's see, the check-in template. Yeah, that's really useful. I'm with you. The health metric. Yeah, that's a really, if you got nothing out of this idea of, okay, so OKRs are actually really, in a way, KPIs. Like you wouldn't say, are you going to do KPIs or are you going to do OKRs? By the way, like every company has KPIs, whether you want them or not. You're doing KPIs. Sorry, that's just how it works. Like they're out there. But when you talk about KPIs, we want to make sure we understand that those are different than OKRs. And a great way to understand this, health metrics are kind of like one set of KPIs, which we're mostly focused on monitoring and maintaining and tracking, like on a dashboard, whereas OKRs are the set of KPIs where we want to focus on moving those needles right now. That's a good way to think about it. And I think you guys have got pretty much all of it in here. I see a lot of good takeaways. So I appreciate that, because that kind of validates to me that you guys are getting something out of this. So that's good.
I'll give you mine.
Sure.
So in general, is that not everything you do on a daily basis is an OKR or a key result, right? You just got to do shit, get stuff done. So you try and put everything into like, everything I have to do has to align with this OKR and key result. Like, no, it doesn't.
Nope. It's such a great point, Brian. And like, so for example, a lot of times like a legal team, they might not need OKRs. They're not trying to move things from X to Y. In fact, I talked to one legal team group. There were like 3 people, and they're like, look, for this quarter, if everything goes well, our company won't even need us. Like if we're buying a building, or, if like there's a customer who's suing us or something, we deal with it. But for us to try to say like, reduce the number of letters on the NDA from 200 to 100, I mean, we don't need to do that. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I was like, okay, fine. You don't need to set OKRs from the legal team perspective, but hey, you know what you need to do? Think about what is your mission as a legal team. Think about what is your alignment check. Like, what are you working a lot with finance, or are you working a lot with sales? Like, well, actually, we do need to work a lot with sales. Well, then go sit on the sales OKRs development session and help them with their OKRs. In other words, align with them and go help develop the sales OKRs and chime in from a legal perspective so that you're on the same page. And they were like, oh, you can do that? And I was like, yeah, you can do OKRs even if your team is not setting OKRs. And so they were like, wow, that's like a breakthrough. So I really want you also to take that point that Brian made seriously, which is like, look, even if OKRs has nothing to do with your team, like I mentioned, some functional teams may not benefit from OKRs, you can still ask these questions. What is the intended outcome of that? What is the intended outcome of signing the lease with that building? Like, how will we know we got a good lease? Even that can be a good question. Maybe not in that case, but maybe it is. So I do want to challenge people to just ask those OKRs coaching questions, even if the teams aren't setting OKRs. All right, good stuff. I think we're probably there. I think we've probably reached the point of we can say thumbs up. Hey, listen, really good to meet y'all. And hopefully I'm going to try to come into some of these meetings. If Brian's kind enough to invite me,
yes,
I'm going to be like you, and I'm going to let other people talk. Imagine that. And I'm going to, learn some stuff from you guys too. So thanks so much for having me, everybody.
We give you everybody golf clap, unmute, whatever, put your video on, hand waves. Thank you very much to Ben. Amazing stuff. And I'm excited to continue learning from you and journey with you on OKRs.com, and Andrew, my buddy here, who's also amazing at it. So we will be seeing many of you through the Carlson Center. Call us, free mentor hours. We'll talk through these things, get you the information, and we will definitely be engaging Ben again with his expertise. So Cameron, over to you for any last words.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Ben, for coming in and sharing your experience and expertise. As we shared earlier, we'll be sharing the recording of this session, and I'll get the slides from Ben and can share that with all of you. And then also some of his call to actions around the book and the master classes of sort. Want to also just share some other upcoming opportunities to plug into the Carlson Center work. So we have our partnered event with Startup SAC on the Startup Happy Hour, and that will be next Wednesday. We'll be featuring the CEO of Engage3, which has been a scaling company in the Sacramento region. We also are throwing in a new online resource for entrepreneurs called the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, where you can identify resources for you at the right time. And then we also are running an event called the Startup Challenge, which will be on September 23rd through 25th. So would love for you to check that out. And I know a couple of you on this have already signed up. And then also a link to our certificate for innovation and entrepreneurship if you're interested in learning more about that. So without further ado, thank you all for hopping in. Thank you, Ben, for sharing your expertise in the OKRs, and look forward to having many more field books on shelves. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Carlson Center. We look forward to supporting you in your entrepreneurial endeavors. So have a great rest of your Friday and a good weekend. See y'all.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.